So good evening and welcome everybody to the City of Lake Forest Park City Council regular meeting for Thursday, May 8th, 2025. And call the meeting to order. With that, I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. Do I hear a motion for adoption of the agenda?
I'd like to move to amend the agenda, please.
Yes, Deputy Mayor. Please.
I'd like to move 7A, King County Regional Assist Homeless Authority presentation to below 7C.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to move to adopt the agenda as amended, to move item A to below item C. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Pardon me. Will there be an opportunity this evening to talk about the process for appointing a council member for our vacancy? We had discussed last meeting about perhaps this meeting discussing the process. So is there an opportunity that we can add that discussion to this meeting?
That's scheduled for the meeting on Monday,
Okay,
the special meeting on Monday. Yeah,
Thank you.
after the joint meeting.
thank you.
So, thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, any other questions on the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of the agenda as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you, Council. With that, we're moving on to public comments. The council will not be accepting online public comments. This portion of the agenda is set aside for the public to address the council on agenda items. Lost my place there, folks. Sorry, it's been a long day. Items or any other topic the council might have purview or control over. However, the mayor or council may not respond to comments from the public. If the comments are of a nature that the council does not have influence or control over, then the mayor or presiding officer may request the speaker to suspend their comments. The council may direct staff to follow up on items brought up by the public. Comments are limited to a 3-minute time limit. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment, Chief? Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. There's no one signed up. Is there anyone in council chambers that would like to provide public comment at this time? Okay, going once, going twice. Closing public comment. Thank you, everybody. And with that, we are moving on to final confirmation, the appointment of John Drew to Planning Commission. Colleagues, you've had the opportunity to review John Drew's credentials. Mr. Drew, would you like to come up and join us at the podium and give us a quick overview of why you would like to be, of your credentials and why you would like to be a member of the Planning Commission? Welcome.
Yes, thanks for the opportunity to serve the city. My wife and I moved to Lake Forest Park 13 years ago, but we are both Seattle natives, born and raised in the greater Seattle area. I'm a 4th-generation Seattleite. I grew up in a house up in the Roanoke area of Capitol Hill where the garage had a hayloft, so old-time stuff. But my wife and I both retired from the University of Washington. I retired in 2020 after 47 years of public service. I was the director of computing and information resources for the graduate school. And as such, I had responsibility for software applications that were used by all graduate students in graduate programs at the 3 UW campuses. I was also the director of graduate institutional research. And so I provided both tactical and strategic data analyses for senior leadership at UW. I did consulting with the Council of Graduate Schools in Washington, D.C. And so I think some of those experiences can provide some useful ways to participate in the Planning Commission. So I read the comprehensive plan update, and it's in its entirety, and it's very well done and really reflects, I think, a lot of the values that my wife and I have, and some of the reasons that we moved to Lake Forest Park. We walk every day in the city. We are in the commons all the time. So it's this, community that we really treasure. And so that's the reason that I want to contribute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drew, and your willingness to volunteer for the community. Colleagues, questions for Mr. Drew? Deputy Mayor Furtani.
Hi, Mr. Drew. Thank you very much for volunteering in a vital commission that we have in the city. I also want to thank you because I was a graduate student at UW during your tenure, and as a user of the Pine email system, really never thought I'd have a chance to thank the person who was responsible for keeping that going. Kept my career alive. In any case, I just wanted to ask you, so what is your particular interest in the Planning Commission? Do you have basically some ideas, something you want to share about what drew you to basically serving on the Planning Commission?
Well, I know that it's a time that the city needs to come to grips with change that's needed. And in fact, the governor signed a couple bills that probably be topics in the city. And so I think that, the values that I expressed about the natural environment, both my wife and I are hikers. I've been a sailor for years and years. So we really treasure this environment. So the real task will be to make the community more diverse, to provide for needed housing, to provide affordable housing, and try to preserve the character of the city. And it's a real challenge, I know. But I'm enthusiastic about participating.
All right, thank you.
Colleagues, other questions for Mr. Drew? Wow. Okay, you got off easy tonight, John. Well, thank you very much for your willingness to serve. We do appreciate your skill set, and anybody that's willing to step up to the Planning Commission with background like yourself is always welcome. So thank you very much. Colleagues, I entertain a motion.
I'd like to move to approve or appoint John Drew to the Planning Commission.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to appoint John Drew to the Planning Commission. Do I have any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of appointing John Drew to the Planning Commission, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it, passes unanimously. Congratulations, John. Welcome to the group. Thank you so much.
It's good.
Okay, we're moving on to proclamations. Let's see. Recognizing May 11th to 17th, 2025 as National Police Week and May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day. Councilmember Gold.
Yep, thanks. Happy to. Whereas in 1962, Congress and the President of the United States signed a proclamation which designated May 15th as Peace Officer Memorial Day and the week in which that date falls as Police Week. And whereas members of law enforcement recognize their duty to serve the citizens of the city of Lake Forest Park by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression or intimidation. And whereas during Law Enforcement Week and throughout the year, the Lake Forest Park City Council recognizes and appreciates the critical contributions and sacrifices made by members of law enforcement at all levels and honors their courage and dedication. And whereas the dedicated men and women of the Lake Forest Park Police Department provide this vital public service day and night, enforcing the law and safeguarding the lives, property, rights, and freedom of every community member. Now, therefore, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Lake Forest Park do hereby proclaim the city's recognition and appreciation of our law enforcement officers, past and present, by designating the week of May 11th through May 17th, 2025 as National Police Week, in recognition of the service given by these men and women who stand guard to preserve the rights and security of all citizens. Further, the City Council calls upon the citizens of Lake Forest Park to observe May 15th, 2025 as Peace Officer Memorial Day in honor of those fallen law enforcement officers and those who became disabled in the performance of their duty, and recognize and offer our respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes. Signed this 8th day of May, 2025.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Yeah, thank you all for your service.
Thank you very much, everyone. Councilmember Lebo, we're recognizing May 17th to 23rd, 2025 as National Safe Boating and Paddling Week.
Thank you. National Safe Boating and Paddling Week. Whereas on average, 650 people die each year in boating-related accidents in the U.S., with the vast majority of those accidents caused by human error and poor judgment and not by the boat, equipment, or environmental factors. And whereas a significant number of boaters who lose their lives by drowning each year would be alive today had they worn their life jackets. And whereas the city of Lake Forest Park is bounded by 2 miles of shoreline on Lake Washington, and whereas a large number of Lake Forest Park's residents of all ages engage in recreational boating and paddling, and whereas the mission of the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary Division II, overseeing the North Shore area, is to promote and improve recreational boating safety by teaching boating safety courses and conducting vessel safety checks. Now, therefore, the mayor and city council of Lake Forest Park, City of Lake Forest Park, do hereby proclaim May 17 to 23, 2025 as National Safe Boating and Paddling Week, and urge all those who boat or paddle to practice safe boating and paddling habits and wear a life jacket at all times while boating and paddling. Signed this 8th day of May, 2025 by the Honorable Mayor Tom French. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next proclamation, recognizing May 18th through 24th, 2025 as National Public Works Week. Councilmember Riddle.
National Public Works Week. Whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives. And whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as emergency management response, water, sanitary sewers, street, public buildings, parks, surface water management, and solid waste collection. And whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services. And whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, are vitally dependent upon the efforts and skill of our public works officials. And whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff public works departments is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work that they perform. Now, therefore, the mayor and the city council of the city of Lake Forest Park do hereby proclaim the week of May 18th through 24th, 2025 as National Public Works Week in the city of Lake Forest Park, and call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions that public works officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. Signed this 8th day of May, 2025.
Thank you, Councilmember. And moving on now, this is bittersweet. We're going to be celebrating the work and retirement of one of our finest, Sergeant Becker, Chief.
So Sergeant Becker did not want to do this, but he was voluntold and was coming in for council, and we're going to do this. So good evening, council members, mayor, members of our community, and Jayson's family and friends, Justine's wife here. Tonight, I have the great honor of recognizing someone who's been a pillar of the Lake Forest Park Police Department for 27 years. Sergeant Jayson J. Becker. As he prepares to retire, we take a moment to reflect on a remarkable career, a remarkable man, and the mark he's left on all of us. Jayson was born in the 60s in San Francisco, California. From an early age, he showed the kind of drive and commitment that would define his life. At just 13 years old, he began delivering the newspapers for the San Francisco Examiner, eventually helping manage delivery routes across the city. Even as a teenager, he was someone people can count on. After graduating from James Eugene McAteer High School in the 80s, Jayson joined the U.S. Army. He went on to serve 13 years as a military policeman, including 7 years overseas in Germany, Panama, and Korea. He also deployed to Iraq during Operation Desert Storm and to Panama during Operation Just Cause. During his military career, he rose to the rank of sergeant, overseeing the Atlantic Traffic Division in Panama and leading a 12-person traffic unit at JBLM. That leadership and service, and by the way, thank you for your service. That leadership and service experience came to us in March of 1998 when Jayson joined the Lake Forest Park Police Department. It wasn't long before he stood out as a natural leader. He was promoted to corporal just after 3 years and to sergeant in 2006. Throughout his career, Jayson stayed committed to patrol, training, mentoring, and supporting officers through every kind of shift, call, and situation. Jayson is also a certified traffic accident reconstructionist, an extremely advanced skill that required over 4 months of intensive training. He played a major role in our department's accreditation, our first accreditation through WASPIC, and helped implement the Lexipol policy system that still guides our operations today. But beyond the certifications and career accomplishments, Jayson made the biggest impact on people, on those of us who had the privilege to work alongside him. I'll never forget the early days of my own career here and how supportive Jayson was. He helped me find my footing, answered every question, and led by example. He wasn't just a field training officer. He was someone who truly cared about helping others grow. His influence is still felt today in many of the officers he mentored, many of whom are still with us, making this department stronger every day. And it wasn't all about business. Jayson knew how to have fun too. After some of those tough 12-hour shifts, we'd head out for a little salmon fishing, just our crew decompressing. Those were the moments that reminded me of what a good friend he was in addition to being a great sergeant. And oh, if you've ever played softball with him, you know how he brought it to the same fire to the field. Jayson was a force on the softball team. He played hard, hit harder, and helped lead his team to more than a few victories. He didn't just showed up, he kicked some butt. He's been a working sergeant in every sense. Steady, reliable, professional, and always leading from the front. Whether backing up an officer on a tough call or guiding a new recruit through their first report, Jayson built confidence and care in everything he did. Sergeant Jayson Becker is not just retiring from the badge, he's leaving behind a legacy of service, mentorship, and a heart that will live on in the officers he's trained, the systems he built, and the friendships he's formed. Jayson, thank you for your service, your leadership, and your friendship. You will deeply be missed, and we wish you all the best in retirement. You've earned every bit of it. And on behalf of our police department, here's a token of our appreciation. Plaque here, which reads, Sergeant Jayson Becker, Lake Forest Park Police Department, 1998 to 2025. Thank you for your dedicated service to the Lake Forest Park Police Department and the community. Your leadership and contributions have been truly invaluable to our officers, staff, and citizens alike. Your presence will be deeply missed. Wishing you a fulfilling retirement ahead. I also have a Chiefs coin for you. I know you've got a couple of those in your retired ID badge. You still need to stay with us. We got a couple more weeks before you leave. And lastly, because you've worked for our police department for longer than 15 years, you will have a banner hung in the PD. There are 2 banners, one signed by the staff and the other one will be signed by you, hanging in the PD. So this is the banner that everybody on staff signed.
Oh, nice.
And Frank 9 was his original call sign number. And then on this particular banner, you've got Lincoln 10, Sergeant, you got your FTO, Frank 9 is a corporal, the radar lidar instructor, and 27 years of service. So,
Wow.
and then come on over here and sign this wherever you'd like. And thank you. And then I also have a certificate for you. So if we can just get a quick picture with council up here, that'd be.
Oh, going this way.
Want us to?
Yep.
Let's be as
Yeah, good. It's almost over. Okay, and there's one more thing for Jayson that I'm gonna get out of the way and have our guild president come on up here. Here, I'll just do that.
So I just want to present this to you. It's from the guild. It's all his badges and patches over the years.
Oh,
Tags.
Wow.
His lunch box.
That's awesome.
That's it. Just make you.
Now the pain is over. Okay, so now I'm gonna, actually, it's you, Mayor.
Yes, we're moving on to promotion of Department Officer Jayson Benson to Sergeant. Oh, yeah, that's extraordinary.
So, good evening again. Council members, mayor, and members of our community. Today is my distinct honor to present the promotion of Officer Jayson Benson to the rank of sergeant with the Lake Forest Park Police Department. From an early age, Jayson demonstrated a deep sense of curiosity and purpose. At just 14 years old, while most teenagers were dreaming of video games or movie studios, he actually had his sights set on working in computer animation for Pixar or DreamWorks. But one episode of Cops changed everything. He saw what it meant to be on the front lines of public service, and in that moment, he shifted course entirely toward law enforcement. Jayson joined the Mount Lake Terrace Police Department post at 14 and never looked back. For 7 years, he immersed himself in the program, rarely missing a meeting, and practically lived at the department. He later pursued a double major in law and justice and sociology at Central Washington University, equipping himself with the academic foundation to match his field experience. Before joining our department, Jayson built leadership experience in private sector in Bellevue, rising the security ranks from corporal to sergeant and eventually serving as a lieutenant. He also gave back by mentoring young people at Kirkland Police Explorer Advisor as a Kirkland Police Explorer Advisor, teaching future officers even before he wore the badge himself. His connection to Lake Forest Park runs deep. His grandfather lived on 38th Avenue and was a longtime member of the Elks Club, what we know now as 12 Degrees North. Jayson grew up visiting the area, attending meetings with his grandfather, and remember seeing Lake Forest Park officers in their white Crown Vics, which I miss. Those moments stayed with him and made a lasting impression. Since joining our department, Jayson has been an outstanding officer and a role model to others. He is one of our most respected trainers, leading in both firearms, field training, and patrol tactics. Jayson has a calm presence, patient, and the genuine care he shows for the community. He's the kind of officer always completes what he's asked of, does it well, and does it with humility. He has a remarkable ability to relate to people, whether it's a new recruit learning how to manage their first high-stress situation or a community member in crisis. Jayson always brings a level of understanding, professionalism, and kindness that represents the best of our department. Outside of work, Jayson is a family man. He and his wife, Nicole, and their daughter, Jessa, born just 7 months ago. 7? Yeah. 7 months ago, becoming a first-time dad has only deepened his perspective and commitment to the work we do in keeping our family safe. When he's not in uniform, you'll probably find him with a weighted backpack on a long ruck or spending weekends with his family at their property in Leavenworth, camping, hiking, and floating on the river, and unplugging from the world without cell reception. In short, Officer Benson is a dedicated professional, skilled trainer, mentor, and now a deserving leader. He has earned the respect of our staff and without a doubt has earned this extra step. And it's with great pride and that we recognize and promote Jayson Benson to the rank of sergeant. Congratulations, Jayson, and thank you for your service, leadership, and example. So next we're going to have the judge come up and do
All right. It is my honor to swear you in as sergeant. If you would raise your right hand. I, Jayson Benson,
I, Jayson Benson,
having been duly appointed as police sergeant
having been duly appointed as a police sergeant
for the city of Lake Forest Park,
for the city of Lake Forest Park,
Washington,
Washington,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
perform the duties of the office
perform the duties of the office
as prescribed by law
as prescribed by law
and to the best of my ability,
to the best of my abilities.
and that I will support and maintain
I will support and maintain
the ordinances
the ordinances
of the city of Lake Forest
of
Park
the city of Lake Forest Park,
and the laws and the Constitution
the laws and the Constitution
of the state of Washington
of the state of Washington
and the United States of America.
and the United States of America.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
He's another one that would rather not be doing this right. All right, I got your sergeant's badge here for you. And
Yeah.
then a Chiefs coin, I think you earned that one as well. Some other badge and some stripes. Now I'm supposed to be slapping on some stripes here, but I don't know where they went. Oh, there you go. All right, now you.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. Well done. Congratulations. That's awesome. Losing my voice completely here. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Gosh, and Jay, all the best. Thank you for your service.
Thanks, everybody.
Extraordinary career, man.
Now you're.
Thank you all for coming. Okay, we're moving on to item A. Now, third on the list here, King County Regional Homelessness Authority. Dr. Kelly Kinnison, CEO. Welcome, Kelly. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I feel like I crashed a family party. Actually, I'm wonderful timing. I love being here to see the celebration of all the public servants. It's just, as a career public servant, it's just warming my heart. And thank you, Mr. Clerk, for working those slides. I really appreciate it. We can go on to the agenda for the presentation. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about who we are now here in May of 2025. I know there's been a lot of change. Just refresh memories around our core functions and just talk a little bit as well about our successes and challenges, really highlighting the advancements we've made with our severe weather work, as I know you're a really valued partner in that work and appreciate that. Next slide. This is us. My Deputy Chief Executive Officer, Simon Foster, came from King County's Department of Community and Human Services, as well as Sochi Megovich. And we have a number of other new folks. Lisa Edge and James Rouse have been around for quite some time. And we'll be joined next month by Dr. Tim Thomas, our new Chief of Research and Data, who's coming from University of California, Berkeley, with a lot of wonderful experience around housing and homelessness issues. And we have also our first general counsel ever in KCRHA, Edmund Witter, and we're really excited to have in-house counsel. I think it really strengthens the organization. Next slide. So core functions. Just a reminder about our mission. We're here to administer an effective performance-based homelessness services to support high-functioning homelessness crisis response system. We've honed our mission over time, which is now really focused on significantly decreasing unsheltered homelessness and, of course, using equity and social justice principles. So a little bit of frequently asked questions. We are a special government jurisdiction created by King County and Seattle. We administer public funds as well as some private funds from philanthropy and some city funds from you all. And we also administer the programs and policies that are funded by those dollars. We are a partner with public and private organizations. We are not part of King County or Seattle, the city of Seattle. And we have our own structures and flexibilities that many other regional authorities have. But one key difference is that we cannot levy taxes. So we have no revenue. Next slide. So the crisis response system, this is something that I think we really want to continue to communicate. Our current mission is really to respond once folks find themselves unhoused. We don't control systems that lead to homelessness, and we don't control the outflow into housing. So we're really there to administer that sort of emergency shelter and resources within our budget. Next slide. And just some of those core functions, what does that mean to run the emergency homelessness response system? We help use data and research to make investments, to make recommendations about investments in which program models and programs should be funded year to year. We monitor those programs and assess their performance and how community members are able to access services. We also activate the severe weather protocols for all of the severe weather funding that we administer. That includes someone working very late and very early hours to monitor weather, especially when we know something's coming, to escalate the tier activations, which then permits different levels of services in each shelter and region. We also spend some time planning and convening folks and sometimes doing special projects. I really see that as a support function that is necessary to bring us out of a collection of programs regionally and up to a system so that we have some connective tissue, some consistency, some place where we are collecting lessons learned, make data available, and just have transparency for the public in terms of all of the investments that are being made in the emergency response system. Next slide. This is our 2025 budget. You can see it's about $206 million. About a third of that comes from the federal government. I'll talk about that in just a moment. Historically, we've had a bit from the Department of Commerce, and of course, your contributions and some of the other Northside cities. But a little over half of our funding comes from City of Seattle, and then another quarter from King County. Next slide. So successes and challenges. Federal funding's under the challenges, in case you were wondering. We are, again, really focused in 2025 on building an equitable homelessness response system. That means, what are the components of that? That means you have to have solid grant management functions, including a functioning system. There's a lot of documents and transactions, as you all know, as city officials, that have to be tracked for audits and just good governance. And so we're really moving from a legacy system where a lot was happening out of the system and being transcribed into the system, into our new Salesforce system, which has a really big impact on transparency at both the user end and our agency end. We've recently published our data dashboard that is going to be updated regularly, about quarterly. That has not been online for a couple of years, and so we're really excited to have those data back available to anyone who cares to click around on our website. I'll admit we see some real opportunities for more usability and more sort of analysis, and so our new Director of Research and Data is really excited to keep making that more and more usable. Training and program guides. So maybe you all have heard about a rebid of homelessness services that was early in KCRHA's history. The reason that hasn't happened in part is because we have to know what we're holding providers to, and that is what is in our training and program guides. So once we're clear about our expectations for running different kinds of programs, then we can write that into our contracts, and then we can hold service providers accountable. That has not been done to date, and so we're really working on getting those developed and out. This year, we've just socializing our rapid rehousing program guide. And so really excited about that one because there's been a lot of community feedback on it. And then finally, meaningful community engagement. I think I've really seen KCRHA as a public agency, one that's supposed to be serving everyone in our region, all elected officials. I don't see regionalism as like a blanket policy or one way to do things. I think We meet families and communities where they are and involve community and how they're responding to issues like homelessness in their backyards. And so that meaningful community engagement just means bringing that attitude to partnership. What do you need? How can we help? How can we provide data about what may or may not happen if you make certain choices? That's our perspective and not that more advocacy perspective that you may have seen in the past. Next slide. So some reflections about where we're headed. So a research and policy hub, as I explained, I would really love for jurisdictions to come to us and say, hey, we've got a problem. We're thinking about a policy fix. What data do you have? What's the research? Has anyone else tried this that you know of? Can you connect us to them? What might happen with this draft of the legislation versus if we made these tweaks? That's what I've been doing it for federal government for a couple of decades. And I think those skills are really something that can benefit our communities here. And the team is really excited to get involved in partnering in that way. We have, as of the end of 2024, completely stopped doing any direct service, which was a part of what KCRHA was doing previously. And again, moving away from advocacy and more towards sort of a center of excellence, if you will. We have a long way to go, but in a few years, I'd like for people to think first of KCRHA when they think about data and best practices in homelessness in the region. I already talked about some infrastructure improvements that are desperately necessary to move us forward and our community building and relationship efforts. And then just our funding model, we've just been through our state audit for 2023 and really found the funding model of having no revenue is, puts us in a pretty precarious situation. So we run completely on a reimbursement model. So we start at zero, we pay providers, then we bill our funders and get reimbursed and come back to zero. And it's not a great model in terms of, what if something happens with those reimbursements, like your federal funding gets cut off, things like that. So our partners have been really open to having that conversation of, what is the best way to make sure every dollar is going to the services that we've contracted for. Next slide. So these are the goals we've committed to for this year. Again, on-time payments. That's been a big problem with our lack of infrastructure in the past. We've heard it loud and clear. We did much, much better this year, closing out 2024 and plan to do even better in 2025 and are on track for that so far. Additional sources of funding. I keep getting tempted to change this, but that's really not what you do when you set goals for the year. I think there are ways that we can think about being creative about partnerships and tapping into dollars that aren't currently in the homelessness emergency response system. But I think it's really a year where if we don't lose capacity, we will be doing well, given the federal, state, and local budget environments, just to be transparent with folks. That regional buy-in, so again, talking more about what partnership can look like. It's not about knocking on doors and asking for money. It's how can we support you? How can we connect you? What administrative things can we do for you that you would rather not do on your own? Of course, that's very relevant to, more small cities and less relevant to larger cities that have a big human services infrastructure. But we're just really inviting those conversations as communities are ready. And then finally, the exceptional workplace piece. If we don't have the people bought into the mission and doing the work in the way that KCRHA is moving, then we won't have much progress. So really working on strengthening what has been a very challenged organization and trusted partner, which we've talked a bit about. Next slide. So a few successes so far. Again, we got all of our contracts out for 2025 by the January of this year, which is a first. So very excited about that. We are seeing upticks in the right direction for families served and families moved into permanent housing, which we're also excited about. That is highly correlated with the implementation of the COVID funds that we were receiving. And so we're really trying to learn about what is that incremental progress with each additional dollar that goes into the system? We've continued to stand up lots of different tools in the system, including non-congregate shelters like tiny home villages, safe lots, and other models that folks are really asking for in their communities. And then I mentioned the policy improvements around some of our service models, including rapid rehousing. Next slide. Some more external successes that are in progress are things we've done. I got appointed, that's great. I think I kind of laugh when I see that, but then I remember a lot of folks wanted to talk to me about, coming and investing in the community as someone coming from Northern Virginia, the DC area, that this agency really needs stability and consistency over some time to be able to work up to its full potential. And so that's not so much about me as, we are really bringing a really high quality leadership team in who is committed to the mission. The other one that I would love to point out is the enhanced inventory tool in our homelessness management information system. So we're just getting kind of word about this and real buy-in. When you tell people sometimes there's a new data tool, they're like, oh great, I don't have time to learn that. But this is a coordinated place where we can see all of the inventory that we have, housing, and then we're moving towards shelter as well. So you might think that already exists, right? You can go to a place and say, I need a shelter bed for, a family of 3, what's open, and that does not exist in our system. So we're really trying to move again to that. How do we have programs talking to each other in real time about how to get the resources where they belong? Next slide. Okay, federal funding impacts. Oh boy. So this is the same pie chart. As you see, our continuum of care funding is about 11% or $23 million. What has happened to date, it's a sort of a moving target, is we were awarded funding, the $23 million of funding in January before the inauguration and the change in the administration. And then we got very early, normally we start to see our contracts for the funds maybe in like July. But very early, we got our new contract template, and it had some provisions that we were really concerned about. One about not funding programs that promote gender ideology, which we don't have a very clear definition of legally, but we believe to mean not serving LGBTQ IA individuals, and another about using a federal system that's not really up and running to verify immigrant eligibility for programs. And so we've been working very closely with our King County counterparts, their legal team, the City of Seattle's legal team, and really figuring out how do we proceed here. Some folks have just refused to sign those contracts. We've taken an approach that seems to be working so far with other continuums of care, where we're basically striking out those and saying we will not accept those. We believe they're illegal, or they're not, like the SAVE, which is the, I don't remember the acronym, but that's the immigration eligibility system. Like HUD can't even tell us like how to get in and use it. And so we've basically said, like, we don't have access to this, we're not going to use it. So we are hoping to sign our first agreement this week. Some of you may have heard that the King County suit got its temporary restraining order yesterday, which is very good news, so that we should not be required to implement those provisions until it's seen by a judge. As you can imagine, not getting those funds would be really devastating for our community. So contingency planning continues to happen. We want to be ready for whatever may come, whether that's just slow repayment or no repayment of those funds once they're incurred by service providers, and just really trying to work hard with service providers to bill really quickly so that they're not incurring a lot of unreimbursed expenses. And other than that, kind of waiting to see what's happening with all the other federal funds that are affected in King County. Next slide. Severe weather. This one I'm really excited to tell you about. There's a lot going on in this space. So just as a reminder, we maintain a regional emergency response for people who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. That includes short-term emergency shelter, and we hold the contract to do engagement and coordination for all of the emergency response for homeless individuals in the county. Next slide. This is how this past winter looked. So we spent 23 days in tier 3, 17 days in tier 2. Those tiers are activated based on very specific weather conditions, temperature, rainfall, smoke. Of course, winter, it's mostly precipitation and temperature. We provided 15,400 bed nights in emergency shelters in response to severe weather. That's about 500 people each night that we were activated, and then over 8,000 meals during that time. We also, as the coordinator, do all of the public communication strategy, which in this case, communication around emergency response is absolutely critical. We don't want people hearing about a shelter that's open, showing up and realizing it's full. People, going to shelters that they're not eligible for because they've misunderstood that it's only a family shelter or only takes individual adults. So we have at least 2 folks who are sort of kind of on call during all of those activations, trying to manage what's available, who needs to have what information, getting people to warming centers as well that aren't necessarily shelters, and getting more and more different routes to getting that information out. Next slide. So over the winter, we made some improvements. We have daily sub-regional huddles. We have a new email address that's monitored by multiple staff every day. We updated our severe weather page and are doing that in real time during activations. And then we're regularly doing after action debriefs with providers and community partners to just keep striving to find out what hitches we're experiencing, what problems, barriers they're running into, and how we can do it better next time. We had good success in last year's budget, getting some more funds for severe weather. So thanks to Councilmember Barone, we have $350,000 going to severe weather shelter. Of course, your wonderful partnership. City of Seattle is giving about $500,000 this year towards severe weather. We're working with East King County cities to do something similar with them based on your model and leadership around severe weather, and working much more closely with the South King County cities, even though we don't have a formal agreement in the works yet. And then really thinking about, providers are telling us it's really hard to think about ramping up emergency services, given the resources that we have. And so what does it look like to do more of a seasonal shelter? So assuming we're going to need to activate that number of days, is it more cost effective to just have something open from October to March, for example? So Seattle will be piloting that with contributions provided by Councilmember Moore, and we're looking at those applications now. Next slide. The last new initiative I wanted to mention is transportation management. So again, the provider feedback is, hey, I find, someone who needs to get inside the nearest capacity, they're going to need to get in a car, a bus. They're not going to get on a city bus in the middle of the night. So trying to figure out how we can get more transit passes for when that's appropriate, but also getting folks on Metro access vans and using ride sharing, just to make sure that we have a lot of options for getting folks inside during those really critical situations. And I think that's it. Yeah. So would love to hear your questions, share with you anything else that I might not have covered.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Kinnison. Colleagues, questions? Yeah, Councilmember Good.
I have two questions, maybe three. How many people are in your organization? That's the first question.
So we're at just under 100 staff right now.
Okay. And the second question is, you mentioned on the slide is you're moving away from direct service and advocacy. And so what does that mean? And what does that mean in reality?
Yeah. So in the past, we've seen examples of where a city in King County might make a particular decision about how they want to address unsheltered homelessness. And if the leadership at KCRHA did not, approve of that, or, there were best practices that maybe go against that, we would sort of announce that or, talk publicly about how we don't agree with that person's position. As someone who came again from federal service and worked across 4 administrations, I'm a change from the inside person. And so advocacy is critically important in our system. I don't think that's KCRHA's role. I think we're here to work across party lines, across, perspectives. Elected leaders have to make decisions based on a number of things. If you want to make decisions based on data and evidence, like we are a place to come to be supported in that. And then, there's a lot of information and context about communities that we need to take into account. We will always hold our values of equity and social justice. So, I'm not saying there's sort of like anything goes, but I think the working with folks to take the next step, to understand the data, to understand what's working is much better in partnership than sort of in friction. And then we need advocates advocating for the different solutions that are out there. So that's how I see our role in the system.
So I see you more transitioning to a data gathering and implementing from the data that you have inputting. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, definitely data driven.
Yeah.
And just laying out without, with the only agenda being helping people understand what we know and what we don't know.
Right.
And that's a lot of what I did in my previous career is you want to make this policy change to the child welfare program. This is the research we have. We don't know what would happen if you made this other choice. If you want to do that, let's collect some data and figure out, does it work or not? And let's be brave enough to make a change if it doesn't work.
Thank you.
And direct services. So there was an initiative called Partnership for Zero where KCRHA hired housing navigators and had them out working with people who are unhoused. And I just think that service model with our other mission of administering the funding to other service providers just really was complex and very challenging to administer. And, we learned a lot, but I think the consensus was that service provision is not in KCRHA's lane. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Thank you for your answer. Very thorough.
Councilmember Riddle, sorry.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It's interesting to see the pivot and how you've described it, because I think some of us are more familiar with the sort of original incarnation of KCRHA. And I think I appreciate the pivot. I think I see where you're going, and I think that's going to work as a resource for communities and for individuals. Have you had a chance to kind of connect and integrate with school districts to better understand their needs and what they've discovered about the communities within their district that might be more hidden and more around the youth?
It's a great question. So I haven't heard a lot about, as I've come and sort of been talking to folks, of course, there's a whole school-based program, the McKinney-Vento program that we're anxiously awaiting to see what happens to that's administered through education. But I think the connection to those mainstream systems, right? So workforce development, child welfare, education are not as robust as we would like them to be. Even the connection to public health, which I think, there's some conversation. I think there's a lot more we can do as we build capacity. It's going to take all of us to make a dent in this problem. And so, I absolutely hear you that, it's a critical partnership. We're seeing some really promising work in the youth space. In Washington, other communities are using a Built for Zero model, which is really about how you coordinate and collaborate to get to basically functional zero in your community. And our youth providers and youth philanthropy and KCRHA are sort of having conversations about, like, does it make sense for King County to be one of these communities adopting this? It's basically like a collaboration methodology, right? But some structure. Let's have some structure to move us forward and take us out of the planning phase and into some action. So really excited to see, what the appetite for that is, how that would work, and hopefully with that youth and young adult space getting organized, those connections to mainstream services for youth will be an integral part of that.
I think as we come kind of approaching the end of the school year, what happens during the summer is always really challenging because it's really hard to connect with the youth when they're not in school.
Mhm.
So I look forward to you finding ways to connect with them, especially during the
Yeah,
summer year months.
great point.
Deputy Mayor Fortuny.
And thank you again for your work and your presentation, really a critical part of our community. And I'm going to echo some of Councilmember Goods and Riddle's comments, but we just had a joint meeting with the Shoreline School District, and this came up. And, it's similar to what Councilmember Riddle was saying. I see really an opportunity for great partnership between the city and the school district and your organization for trying to get services to students, for instance, over the summer. And not really a question there. The question that I had for you was more about the transition you're making to the out of the direct service model and more towards sort of a pass-through, fund other agencies kind of thing. What do you see is the state of your budget as this happens? Because I know that one model is not very much like the other, and I know you're trying to work on the funding piece as well. But do you see the overall headcount and budget shrinking, staying the same, getting bigger? What's your prognosis?
Yeah, so as we focus on being a good partner to programs, getting them paid on time, being a support system, we have seen that, the initial capacity was not what it needed to be. We run at, on average, about a 7.9% administrative budget. And for any of you who are on boards for nonprofits, that's pretty lean. So my perspective is we need to make the case. We need to get really good with what we have. And then that makes you successful at asking for more. And so we've just been focusing in my first 9 months on identifying the problems, the misconnections internally, externally, tightening everything up and really assessing where our staffing can get leaner, where we need to get more robust. And we've done a lot of that, sort of moving the pieces around. And I feel like, our funders are really thinking a lot about that information, about what changes we've made, our successes, measuring those, and then saying, this is kind of where we're at until we are able to get more administrative resources, which is obviously a really tough sell when you're in such a constrained budget environment. And we, just like everyone, want as much money as possible to go to services. But if we're running services and then not able to pay providers, not able to monitor contracts, not able to make sure that taxpayer dollars are used appropriately, like that doesn't work either. So completely understand the taxpayer's perspective, elected officials' perspectives on that, and just trying to be as transparent and have as much data for folks as possible.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question.
Questions for Dr. Kinnison? Councilmember Goldman.
Yes, so also thinking about your pivot to more of like an administrative role, are there any organizations in Lake Forest Park or other North King cities that you have already started partnering with that you could talk about?
Yeah, so I've come up Lake City Partners and Aurora Commons, and folks sort of in that area have been a place I've spent time. I know that Catholic Community Services and then the Reach Outreach that is active on the north side. We've worked with them on north side issues as well as others. I've been out for some tours of some of the Catholic Community Services sites. The Brooke Buettner's work with the, I'm going to forget the acronym. Yes, thank you. Is really inspiring. And I have really learned a lot from how she's working in the community and sort of coalescing folks. I'm due back at another of their meetings soon. So definitely trying to learn as much as I can about all of the cities and regional differences. I know that we've historically had a point person for each region at KCRHA. Right now, we have a wonderful planning manager, Kiki Cervantes, on board. We do not have sub-regional outreach folks. We are moving towards hiring them as we get a handle on our 2025 budget. But we do have Kiki who, is really thinking about how to make sure that the different contexts of communities are in our planning all the time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, Councilmember Lebo.
Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Kinnison. How would you rate our progress on reducing homelessness in terms of what your department?
Oh, it's sort of our lane. I would say it's painfully slow, ticking in the right direction after the influx of COVID funds. I'm very, very concerned about where we're headed next year with several of the state funding cliffs. There's no chance we're not going to have a reduction in federal funds. I mean, we're only able to sort of negotiate because those funds were already appropriated, but that ends, of course, in 2026. And so, what we are talking about is how do we keep the system online? How do we keep the currently funded shelters, permanent supportive housing? How do we keep all of that whole for as long as possible? And frankly, I think that's the metric, making more progress without, there's tweaks we can do that, are good for coordination, making sure there's not overlap, but that's not going to result in, seeing a nice bar chart that's like ticking down. And so that's a commitment that I will make to you, is always tell you the truth about those things. I'd love to promise you that we're on the verge of making a huge dent, but I think that's the realistic goal for right now, is just not losing system capacity.
Thank you.
Friends, any other questions for Dr. Kinnison? Councilmember Riddle.
I had a couple more comments.
Sure.
One is, do you provide some of this data and research that you've done to like emergency management throughout the region? In other words, sort of, when is the smoke, when is the AQI work, and sort of partnering with them so that we're all kind of on the same page. Is that part of that data that you're working with?
Yes. So a lot of our data that I've been talking about is specific to the emergency response system. And then we also have, as the continuum of care, so HUD money entity, we have a broader system perspective where we get information about non-KCRHA funded programs. We do sit at the regional coordination table for all of the emergency response. So, the library system, first responders, right? Those folks are regularly meeting to be able to address whatever emergency situations come along. And we are in those meetings as part of the homelessness response system.
I do know that some cities have in-house emergency management, and we have an ILA with our partner, Kenmore, for emergency management. So it kind of falls outside of those areas that you've just described. So maybe just make sure that there's no gaps in that communication. And then the last bit is, I was right. I mean, I would say leverage sort of the North King County cities where, we were first to the ILA. We were first to developing, Radar, which became Racer. We are willing to partner together. If you have a need to, look at bringing a seasonal shelter, we would be happy to continue to be partners in this region to bring these new ideas to fruition and support each other through this. And we've shown that we're interested in it. And we want to keep moving forward and being communities that support everyone who lives within our communities.
Thank you so much for that. We'd love to work with you.
Colleagues, any other questions for Dr. Benson? Well, thank you so much for coming and
you.
joining us. We appreciate your work and excellent presentation.
Thank you.
All the best. Okay, colleagues, we're moving on now to the police department. Oh, I think we should take a 30-minute recess. Oh, popcorn only takes 2 minutes, right? In this micro, so. Sorry, Chief.
All right.
Yeah, welcome, Chief. I always look forward to the police annual report. Great, amazing work that the department has done over the last year and continues to do so. Chief, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Real quickly, I'm going to read something while Matt does that. So I'm going to read a real quick article. Please be patient with me. And I'm sorry, Katie, that it's going to be a little while before we get to you. So I'm going to read this article real quick. We in law enforcement have come to realize our obligations to the communities we serve. Police agencies can operate only as efficiently as the public's cooperation will allow. Therefore, police must demonstrate daily that they are acting in the best public interest and have the welfare of the community at heart. Both law enforcement and the community have a responsibility, and neither can get something for nothing. There must be a mutual understanding and approval of the opportunities and rewards available to both. Benefits in any community relationship do not come automatically. If citizens are uninformed about law enforcement and the important part it has played in the progress of their communities, it would not be surprising if they form their own opinions based on no information, little information, or misinformation. Therefore, we must strive to continually promote good public relations and an understanding of the value of good law enforcement. By taking part in community affairs when possible, we can help keep people informed of our aims and objectives. Most of all, we must show our willingness to be of help. One of the citizens' basic rights under the democratic system is to know how efficiently and to what purpose his tax dollar is spent and to what extent he is receiving returns on his investment in terms of personal security benefits from his local police. Citizens should demand good enforcement by actively supporting their elected officials in the effort to obtain more personnel, better training, and better pay for their police force. We are continually trying to professionalize the field of law enforcement. We have made many gains in the past few years in this direction. Many remain to be accomplished. This is a two-way street. Law enforcement, community supporting both share the sidewalk. Chief Foster, 1965.
Wow.
We're still doing exactly the same stuff. There was maybe some gendering things in there, you can tell. But most everything that was talked about here is exactly what we've been continuing to pass on the torch. So I just wanted to pass that on. I was going to do it at the end, but Matt was working on the presentation there. Thanks, Matt. So tonight we're going to go over the year 2024 and the annual report to council. This is, I believe, my 12th year doing this presentation. I have tonight Commanders Diego Zanilla and Commander Ross Adams, and they'll be presenting their sections. So I always start off every annual report when this catches up to me. There you go. With our mission and our values. Our mission is to develop and support a team of professionals who consistently seek and find innovative policing strategies to affirmatively promote, preserve, and deliver those quality services which enhance the security and safety in our community. To support this mission, we will work in strong partnership with our community. And our values is our department values the sanctity of all life. We strive for the equal, equitable, and compassionate application of law enforcement services for all and the universal acceptance of all people. We endeavor for the highest level of training and diversity for our police staff and maintain partnerships with our community and local governments to provide those urgently needed resources for those in need. So at our recent awards banquet, I presented the awards for 2023 and 2024 to the staff. And I'd like to read part of the introduction as it aligns with our mission and value statement. First, I want to thank each and every one of you, the work you do day in and day out, and nothing is short of incredible. Policing in today's world presents new and complex challenges, yet you continue to show up with professionalism, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to this community. You've helped shape a department that's known for being community-focused, proactive, and one of the best in customer service and crime prevention. Your efforts have built trust within the city and created strong relationships that extend beyond our department. So tonight, the agenda is I'm going to talk a little bit about our staff. I'm going to talk about safety in Lake Forest Park, and then I'm going to pass it on to our patrol operations, and then we're going to move to support services. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about, we'll wrap it up with accreditation, RCR, community, and our future. So, you okay? So our organizational chart, there's basically two divisions. I have a third division of the emergency manager with NEMCO and our emergency manager, Kevin Lowry. And then I have two divisions here, which is patrol operations and our support services. Patrol operations is basically your uniformed officers, and then support services is everything else that runs our organization. Commander now, it does say lieutenant, and I'm going to go back and forth between lieutenant and commander within 2024 because we changed over in 2025. But the lieutenant at the time, patrol operations, covers all the uniform, like I said. Let's see. And in 2025, so I wanted to just point out, if you see on this chart, in patrol, we have a sergeant and 3 officers. And then there's this little gap there on the second crew there. Thankfully, through traffic funding, we have now filled that particular position, and we have some symmetry, something I've been wanting for a very, very long time. And it is great to have that ability to fill that position. And then also we have our traffic support officer that is going to fill in the other side. That is a discussion we'll have in 2026 when we talk about 2025. But I just wanted to point out that thank you, council, for that. So talking about staffing for 2024, as you all know, we had Rhonda, our lieutenant, retired in May. And what that did is that had a domino effect because we ended up with an open position for patrol operations. And with that opening, we promoted Ross Adams from sergeant to lieutenant. And then I did a switch on the lieutenants. I took Diego that was running support services for, I believe, about 5 years. And now he's going to run operations. And then Ross is going to run into support services. This gives diversity. It gets you to know everything about every key piece of the police department so they can take over my job. That's my goal, is to make sure that those two know how to take over what I do. And then what that did is it opened up another position for sergeant in Ross's position. And that's when Sergeant Walker took that particular position. So there's a lot of movement just right there with that one retirement. And then in 2024, we hired 3 officers. We have Officer William Godsill that is working the road, doing a great job. And then Officer Michael Riz that is just in his last phases of field training. And then Officer Amanda Johnson. And she actually took on the traffic support officer role in 2025. So more on that next time. And then I wanted to point out our volunteer, just an amazing individual that's in our community, Iko Nifasen. I don't know if I said that right. He would laugh because everybody butchers it. He is one of our volunteers. I call him the program manager because he just takes on programs and does a phenomenal job. He does all the legwork with quotes and getting equipment, and he's a good partner with our North Sound Police Foundation. And a lot of stuff that we have talked about, he is the driving force behind it and getting a lot of things done. And he's just amazing volunteer for us. And let's see, now going in a little bit of the staffing challenges in 2024. So it's like, hey, you got all these positions. How come you're not filling them? Just to give you a little bit of an insight into it. We received more than 80 applications in 2024 for entry level and certified. Over 40 of them were interviewed. And the result is we had 6 of them make it into backgrounds with 2 that were hired. That's kind of the process, 2%. So there is a lot of things that go into this. A lot of people put things in their applications where they don't qualify. There's a lot of folks that go into the oral boards and they do a horrible job in their answers to the questions. And then when you get into backgrounds, you lose a lot of people. And then there are some that get hired before we can get them on board. So there's a lot of different variables in all that, but we're still working really hard to get that done. And a little bit more on that in a sec. And then safety in Lake Forest Park. So over the past several years, it's been the vision of the police department to ensure that the city of Lake Forest Park is one of the safest cities in the Puget Sound region to achieve through delivery of quality law enforcement services. In 2024, we accomplished this through the hard work of our employees combined with the active engagement of our community of Lake Forest Park. This came out right now. In May of 2025, Lake Forest Park received the recognition ranking 2nd safest place in 2024. in this, thanks. In the state of Washington and first by population. So it's a little hard to read, but those little two graphs at the bottom, this particular website. So some websites are going to rank people differently. A lot of these are based on different models of how they rate things. But this particular website has us in the 30 safest places in Washington at number 2. And then from a population standpoint of 10,000 to 30,000 residents, we're number 1. And then another article I read was from this FLXLlease.com, LFP ranked 4th, stating Lake Forest Park emphasizes community policing. This approach has been successful, resulting in low crime rates. The city's residents are actively involved in maintaining safety, making it a secure place to live. So just a really nice article to say those things. So now I'm going to pass it on to my amazing commander here, Diego. And he's going to talk about patrol operations and kind of run through those statistics.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, everybody. You know me, Diego Zanella, Commander. I'm in charge of patrol operations. I don't know why the chief decided for my most goofy pictures, but perfectly fine. He's my boss, so. All right, let's go with the police response. All right, so police response for 2024. 9,634 calls, 2.5% more than last year. Lots of calls for being a small department. And the numbers reflect basically the service we provide. I worked for 5 different departments. In these departments, we respond to everything. Every time that a citizen needs something, we respond. So it's not just for violent crimes and property crimes. We respond to the barking dog or the 2 neighbors who are arguing. We prefer to be there before something escalates. That's the reason why we have 9,634 calls per year. And it's the way we want to serve our community. Let's check the police activity for 2024. So, of course, everybody can read the numbers, so I'm not going to go through every single number, but I wanted to point out 3 things. First of all, the number of traffic stops. This number went down pretty substantially, 28% less than the previous year. And the reason is that less traffic stops because our officers are busy with calls. And in 2024, we had actually 1 traffic officer, but he was responding to calls. So clearly, when we have less traffic stops, we have less DUIs, less arrests, and so forth. So this is a little bit of strange stats. The second point that I wanted to make is the increase of domestic violence incidents. It's very, very unfortunate, but police cannot do very much on these calls. I mean, we can't have really a proactive approach. There is nothing like a preventative method that we can go. Yes, we can respond quickly, but we are already very quick as police department. So DVs, and it's a trend that was pretty common in 2024 for our region. So very sad that is going up. And the third thing is pretty good, actually. It's about property crimes. So almost everything, actually, without almost, everything is going down. So less property crimes like malicious mischief, graffiti, frauds, everything like that. And also the next slide will show that everything is going down. Now, the 80% of burglaries is a little bit of a misleading number because first of all, let me explain the difference between burglary first degree and burglary second degree. First degree, the suspect has to be armed or he assaults somebody inside the building. Second degree, the suspect is not armed or it doesn't assault anybody. So that's the difference between first and second. And but if you add everything, actually burglaries went down 13%. And so also the other property crimes, same trend, we're going down. And actually, if you add everything and you do a average, everything went down about 30%. So very positive statistics here. So let's talk now about people who drive too fast or don't pay attention and they crash against each other. See if it takes a little bit. All right. So 108 traffic collisions in 2024, about 18% less than in comparison with 2023. You can see that for the most part, well, there are traffic accidents all over, of course, but for the most part, they are between Bothell Way Northeast and Ballinger Way Northeast. I expect for 2025 to have different statistics because now we have a traffic unit. And so clearly we will have more traffic enforcement. And so I'm pretty sure next year the stats will be different. Let's go to traffic tickets. We have less tickets, 939 in comparison with 2023. And once again, everybody was working patrol. We didn't have a traffic officer who was focusing on traffic enforcement. So we were down about 33% in comparison with 2023. I already told you that I think will be different in 2025 because now the traffic unit is pretty substantial. We have a sergeant, we have 2 traffic officers, and we have a traffic support officer. So I really predict a completely different stats next year. Let's go to traffic safety cameras. 3 red light camera locations and 2 school zone camera locations. You can see the 3 locations for the light average for the last 5 years was 3,086, 2,709, and 2008 for the third one. The average is about 2,600 tickets for these 3 red lights. And it's basically almost 300 tickets less than 2023. So I'm glad that people are stopping when the light is red. Regarding the school zone cameras locations, you can see the average for LFP. In the last 5 years, we were in 5,337. And for Brookside, the last 5-year average was 12,489. And if you check Brookside Elementary for 2024, the number is really high, of course, because we include also the school walk zone violations, and those are 24/7 for 20 miles per hour. So that's really the reason why of that high number. For us, they are force multipliers, right? So we can't have officers all over. So cameras are really important for us because help us to keep speed and collisions down. So extremely important for us. Let's talk about a patrol story. I chose this one because I wanted to show how fast our officers respond to calls. And also sometimes how the law doesn't really help the police, although we want to help the community. In this case, on January 11, 2024, early in the morning, 3 cars arrived at the Pushery Marijuana shop, 2 cars parked outward, so ready to go, getaway cars. And the third one crashed against the building to gain access. And they actually made $13,000 of damage to the building. Anyway, they were all juveniles. And 3 of them entered the building, and you can see the picture there. Big bags, started to steal marijuana products, and they left quickly after the burglary. Now, fortunately, our officer responded immediately, and they were there with no time. And actually, one of our officers chased one of these criminals and was able to tackle the guy. And the guy, of course, resisted the arrest, but we were able to handcuff and detain the person, which was great because nobody got injured, but we were able to at least grab one of them. The other two cars took off. Like I said, all the cars, I don't know if I said that, but all the cars were stolen. And of course, they drove recklessly away from our officers. I wanted to talk about this case also because there's a little bit of misconception about juveniles commit this kind of crimes. These are, let's see if I can go to the next slide. We're really talking about real criminals here. Okay, they're juveniles, I understand that, but we are not a couple of kids who are stealing a bag of chips and some Coke. And I'll tell you why, because the offender who got tackled had a phone with him, a cell phone, and our detectives actually were able to ask and obtain judicial consent to check the phone. So our detectives went through all the pictures and images and messages, and it showed that these are enterprises, these are businesses. So the pictures, they were like pictures of the marijuana products, pictures of the prices, pictures of the point of contacts where they could obtain this stolen merchandise, electronic payment, how to pay these dealers. I mean, this is an enterprise. So, like I said, no couple of kids stealing something from the 7-Eleven. The juvenile, because it was released to the parents, and we couldn't even question him because there is a law in Washington State that says that if the offender is a juvenile, we can even ask questions if the parents want him or her to talk to us. We have to call immediately a defense attorney. And of course, if the defense attorney tells the offenders, don't talk to the police. So it doesn't really help too much with our cases. And the final note is that the King County Prosecutor Attorney's Office decided not to charge the offender, not to charge the juvenile, but send him to a diversion program. So I was part of, when I was young, of the diversion program. I was helping these programs with King County. And in this case, it's basically nothing. He will be probably writing a letter of apology and clean up some graffitis in downtown Seattle for 4 hours, and will be that will be it. So a little bit frustrating for our patrol officers. Let's go to a better slide. I really like the next one. I love dogs, so for me this is very important. So we were in 2024. We welcomed Bella. Bella is a Belgian Malinois. Super cute dog, full of energy. She's doing really, really good. And they are great. Bella and Officer Coleman are really working hard. They are succeeding in what they are doing. And we had dogs before. Our chief was a dog handler, but we stopped that program for a few years. And so I'm really happy that in 2024, the chief decided to recreate this important unit. And Bella is not a dog who bites. It's a dog that is specialized in narcotics detection. And it was founded by the community, basically, because the North Sound Police Foundation helped us in buying the dog, do the training. Actually, the car is coming soon. All the equipment that a K9 unit needs was paid by the North Sound Police Foundation. So it was a very good addition to our units. She's also a good PR because, of course, she's a dog. Almost everybody loves dogs. So we can do, she can come to demonstrations, events, schools. And so it's extremely good for also the patrol in general as a unit to have a dog with us, working daily with us. So I'm very happy that the chief decided to have the K9 back in our unit. I think that's it for me. And so now Commander Adams will talk about.
I remember Chief's dog, Dakota.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very well.
Thank you,
Commander.
Commander Zanella. I second that about the photographs. It's interesting looking back. This has been 10 years. This is my 10th year here. It's been incredible. I remember getting sworn in this room as an officer. And I'm now wearing reading glasses, so. All right. Well, Mayor and council members, I have been waiting for a year to give this presentation to you. I'm very, very excited about this team. And it is with tremendous excitement that I present to you my team from the Support Services Division. This is a group of very hardworking individuals, and I'm very proud of this group. Their accomplishments every day and the teamwork that they demonstrate every single day. In 2024, the Support Services Division was comprised of multiple units. These included the Investigations Unit, comprised of 2 full-time detectives, Craig Teschlog and Jayson Zaboter. The Records Unit, comprised of 2 full-time civilian employees, Kelsey Altus and Kelly Vetters. And the Property and Evidence Room, which is managed by Support Services Officer Christian Hansen. Christian also facilitates offender transports for court, and we will talk about this a little bit later. Also pictured here and new in 2025 is Traffic Support Officer Amanda Johnson. And as the chief mentioned, we'll be talking more about her in 2026. The Records Division. So these 2 employees who are joining us in the back here, Kelly and Kelsey, are absolute rock stars. There's a tremendous amount of work product that flowed through their office in 2024. This included officer and investigative reports, tickets and citations, traffic collision reports, holding cell records, and so much more. The majority of the police department's public records requests are also received by and handled by our record specialists. These requests include attorney requests for reports and other documentation, private citizen and media requests, and collision report requests from insurance companies. Not only did they dedicate more than a whopping of 156 hours of time to records requests and completed 324 public records requests in 2024, but they also ensured that the department complied with all public disclosure laws pertaining to physical and digital records. This was a huge amount of time that they invested, and that time took them away from the so many other duties that that are required of them. In addition, in 2024, the Records Unit managed fingerprinting services for concealed pistol license applicants and the 103 entertainer licenses issued for Deja Vu in 2024. This required maintaining the public-facing scheduling software and accepting and tracking payments. Kelly and Kelsey also oversee the PD's drug take-back program, which accepted, packaged, shipped, and destroyed over 190 pounds of leftover and unused medication in 2024. This was a 71% increase over the previous year, and I am so pleased by this program because this is medication that can unfortunately end up in the hands of the wrong people that shouldn't be taking it. So this is truly a life-saving program. The list that our records division handles, the list of tasks, it goes on and on. But I have to say that this PD would not function without the professional capabilities of these 2 employees. And now I'd like to highlight the Support Services Officer, Christian Hansen, and the support functions that he provided in 2024. There are 2 main functions of this position: property and evidence room management and court transportation services. Now, effective property and evidence room management includes not only the physical intake, handling, and tracking of items within the room, but also the proper legal and documented destruction of items no longer needed. Such items can include hazardous items like edged weapons, broken metal, and glass, narcotics, firearms, and biohazardous material items. And Officer Hansen has done a phenomenal job, truly phenomenal job, of maintaining our property and evidence room. In 2024, he disposed of 430 items from the room, maintaining a very manageable inventory of just over 300 items now in 2025. These include numerous firearms, weapons, and dangerous and illegal drugs of varying types. As I mentioned, this position also facilitates court transportation services. Lake Forest Park contracted with 3 jails for booking and housing services in 2024: the Linwood Jail, Snohomish County Jail, and the King County Jail. Officer Hanson conducted offender transports to and from court from all 3 jails in 2024, multiple times a week, resulting in the safe transportation of hundreds of defendants in over 80 days of court hearings. Officer Hanson regularly comes out to assist patrol line detectives as well during their investigations to help with any needs relating to the holding and safe transportation of our defendants. The Investigations Division is currently staffed with 2 full-time detectives, Craig Teschlog and Jayson Zaboter. These detectives are highly trained and experienced in investigating all types of crime, but they focus primarily on felony-level criminal investigations and investigative referrals from APS and CPS. Both detectives also serve as investigators for the CSPA Major Crimes Task Force, and Detective Zaboter is an investigator with the King County Independent Investigation Team. In 2024, Detective Zaboter responded to several detective callouts for deadly force encounters with the King County IFID team, which involved law enforcement officers in other jurisdictions in King County. Now, this slide here, from this you can see the overall case assignments were down in 2024 as compared to other years. But we did show a spike in burglaries, felony level theft cases, and APS and CPS referrals. And while this might seem alarming, these numbers reflect a return to a more typical crime pattern per capita in this area. You can see from years 20 to 2022 that these numbers are near identical. Unfortunately, due to staffing shortages in 2024, the investigations unit functioned for most of the year with only 1 detective. That was Detective Teschlog. While Detective Zaboter was already slated for the 2nd detective position, he was needed for much of the year in patrol. He is one of our lead trainers and is truly an incredible field training officer. And he was really needed to help get that staffing up in 24. Still, though, this did not stop me from assigning cases to him, which he did a great job of managing while he also pulled double duty as a patrol officer. Now, as you can see here, the different case assignment types in 2024 varied quite a bit. Property crimes such as burglaries, forgery, theft, and identity theft made up a good portion of case assignments. And while the others are what we typically refer to as persons crimes, and these included physical assault, sexual assault, and other cases like APS and CPS referrals, missing person cases, and the like. Managing a caseload as a detective is a very difficult task. Our detectives work tirelessly to manage a wide variety of case types. And from this slide, you can see that despite 9 months of only 1 detective working full-time in the office, both detectives were able to close an incredible 84 investigative case files in 2024. And what's more impressive is that of the 84 cases closed by our detectives in 24, even with minimal staffing issues, 61% of those investigations resulted in the arrest and or filing of criminal charges. And this is well above the national average for case completions. Now, just as my partner, Commander Zanella, did, I want to share an investigative story. And I have to preface this with, nobody calls a detective out when something good has happened. We come in and we do the hard stuff at the end. The patrol work is also very, very difficult. The scenes that we get exposed to, the trauma we have to endure and work and stay professional. But the detective, these are the detail-oriented people that do some really incredible things. Now, this story is not really meant to shock you or to tell you the awful things that people can do, but to show you what a typical detective-led investigation looks like, how it starts, and how it plays out. In 2024, patrol officers responded to a felony domestic violence assault with a weapon. The victim was seriously injured by their partner to the extent they required hospitalization and multiple surgeries. Responding officers arrested the suspect as he was fleeing, secured the scene, and summoned medical aid for the victim. The victim's young juvenile child, who witnessed the event, was temporarily cared for by assisting crisis responders. All in all, this was a perfectly executed patrol response. But what happens now? This is when a detective is called out. Detective Zaboter was called out from his time off, which honestly is just part of the gig as a detective. He was first briefed by phone and then in person when he arrived at the station. The detective immediately launched into an interview with the suspect in our holding facilities interview room, where he used his honed skills to obtain a full confession from the suspect. Now, the detective turns his attention to the victim, who is always our focus. Following the suspect interview, the detective went to the hospital, interviewed the victim, obtained a release form for the victim's medical records, and obtained photographs of their injuries. Photographs are crucial to investigations as they can be used to document so much, like the progression of bruising and scarring or marks made by specific weapons. After these initial stages of the investigation, the detective then began compiling the investigation for the prosecution. This included reviewing all of the statements by officers, witnesses, and involved parties, reviewing all video evidence like body-worn cameras, inspecting crime scenes, documenting evidence such as weapons, bloodstains, and property damage, and compiling all of this information into a clear, well-written report for filing with the prosecutor. Once the case was filed, the next steps included months of ongoing follow-up contact with the victim, the county's victim advocates, and preparation for trial. Investigations can take weeks, sometimes months, sometimes longer. And it's common for detectives to maintain an active caseload of 20 cases or more. It's a tremendous amount of work, and yet is one of the most gratifying assignments in law enforcement. Anyone who has worked this assignment will tell you the same. From this case, I should point out that the defendant is still awaiting trial, which is why there are no more specific details provided in this. On a slightly more uplifting note, unintended, I want to share with you the substantial progress made in 2024 with our UAV and drone program. After years of research and with the tremendous support of the North Sound Police Foundation and ECO, Chief, we were able to execute our plan and vision for the UAV and drone program. We were able to purchase 5 drones capable of providing a multitude of services to the community and area law enforcement agencies. We officially appointed 5 drone operators and have been coordinating their initial training and certifications. 2025 will see us giving the final certifications to the operators and begin using these tools to better serve the citizens of Lake Forest Park. More on this to come next year in our 2026 presentation. Now, this concludes my portion of the presentation, so thank you so much. Chief?
Thank you, Commander.
These guys are way more comfortable than they've been, huh? They're doing a better job. Okay.
Great.
Up with accreditation. Let's see, you don't need to see those pictures.
Oh, go back. Go back.
No, they did
Can't get
Well, see the
Oh,
bottom left
yeah.
one there? Got a little Superman cape. That'll be happening next Saturday with our
Was this from
5K.
last year?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so enough of that. Accreditation is through WASPIC, our chief, or Sheriff's and Police Chiefs Association. We first started accreditation in 2009 and was accredited or earning that accreditation in 2012. So this is the 4th time we've been awarded with accreditation, which is 16 years of meeting these standards. The purpose of the accreditation is a law enforcement agency is accredited to professionalize the law enforcement industry by providing a review of processes for agencies to be certified as operating under industry best practice and standards. Kind of a throwback to that first article I was talking about standards. There are over 250 police agencies in the state, and only 71 of them have accreditation. And in King County, out of the 35, there's 15, and we're one of those 15. I do see a big trend of a lot of agencies moving towards accreditation in a lot bigger fashion. Our accreditation team, they're just getting hammered, the people that actually do the accreditation, because there are so many agencies wanting this particular label. So I wanted to say thanks. Commander Adams is the one that went with the team to get this done, and we had a clean audit. And it's a 4-year process. It's a lot, and then we do a yearly annual checkup just to make sure we're on progress, and it's just been awesome. Next up is RCR, Regional Crisis Response Agency. And this council is well aware of RCR, and it continues to be a vital resource to our community. Under the leadership of Administrator Hill and Council Member Goldman, our mental health professional crisis responders support both community members in crisis and the officers who serve them. Acting as a force multiplier, RCR allows us to direct cases more appropriately suited for mental health professionals rather than the traditional police response. In 2024, RCR engaged with 59 individuals through more than 180 encounters in Lake Forest Park. A special thank you to Sherry and Svetlana, who regularly are assigned to serve our city and continue that meaningful impact. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read an email from Councilmember Fioritani with an RCR question. So Chief Harden, thank you always for a great report. I'm always proud to share your reports with the community. The story of the RCR encounter was archetypical of how these kinds of encounters should be, with the counselor or social worker front and center and the officer monitoring and ready. My question is to you would be, are these RCR encounters counted in the calls for service statistics? And then it would be nice to show that RCR is actually saving officers time for handling crime-related calls. So yes, RCR encounters are included in the calls for service data if they are linked to a police-initiated call. So, however, there are times when crisis responders conduct follow-ups or handle situations independently without police involvement. And in those instances, those encounters are not captured in our police calls for service data. For example, in 2024, RCR reported 59 encounters in Lake Forest Park, but only 44 of those were tied to a police call in our system. So while there is some overlap, not all RCR activity is reflected in our calls for service totals. So there are a lot of variables at play, and we don't have 2 or 3 more hours to go. So as for whether RCR saves officers time for handling crime-related calls, on the surface, absolutely. When RCR takes over, assists or follow-ups on a case, that's time an officer would have otherwise spent on the incident. That said, it's challenging to quantify precisely how much time is saved, since we can't measure what would have happened in the RCR's absence. So still, anecdotally and operationally, their involvement clearly provides relief to our patrol workloads. Hopefully that answers that question.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Community engagement. It has been a strain with staffing for the last few years, and how we accomplish this stuff is just amazing. And how we're able to do it with what we do, and how we accomplish the things we do, and how small we are with the resources we have is pretty amazing. We did Shop with a Cop. We did the Summer Safety Day. We did the Polar Plunge with Rotary and the Polar Plunge with Special Olympics and National Night Out, which we had like 30 neighborhoods that we roundabout touched in some way. We had the Torch Run with Special Olympics, the Department Visitors with Kids and Family, and the Scouting of America that come by and visit. And we had blood donations and attended the Shoreline Fire pancake breakfast. There's just a lot of things that we do. And I know I'm missing things, like a lot of the community colleges that Diego attends on our behalf. It's amazing what our community and our staff do together. And then our North Sound Police Foundation, you heard me talk quite a lot about it. It's a nonprofit organization that supports law enforcement agencies in Lake Forest Park, Mill Creek, and Lake Stevens. The foundation's mission, and that happened in 2024, we got Lake Stevens on board. The foundation's mission is to enhance public safety and build community partnerships by providing resources and support to law enforcement agencies. It's been extremely helpful for the police department, especially in these tight budgets. I honestly, council, have no idea where we'd be without the foundation the last 4 or 5 years. When COVID hit and we had took 15% budget cuts and all the stuff that we needed to do in the PD, and I know how our budget has been, so many things that we got accomplished through the foundation. And I tried to steer away from the things that a city should provide, but it's just been tough. And we cannot continue to rely on that because these are funds that come in through donations. But it's amazing that what this foundation has done. It looks like Medina and Issaquah may be the next agencies to join us. And so it's amazing to see that growth. And I was asked today by our King County Chiefs president. She asked me if maybe we can present to our King County Chiefs to see if there's some more agencies that can get involved. But North Sound Police Foundation has provided over $200,000 in funds for Eyes and Ears for training and a storage trailer and pepper ball and health and wellness training days and photo days and awards and gym outfitting and health and wellness and radio equipment, UAV, canine. And now, we'll talk about it in 25, but ECO did develop over about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months for the cell phone forensics. He did an amazing amount of data work, and we now have a cell phone forensic unit. So we have an officer that needs to go into a cell phone instead of handing it off to another agency, wait maybe 9 months at times to get data back. We're able to do that forensic unit search right now, which is really cool. And one of our detectives, a boater, I believe, has been trained up on that. So it's pretty amazing. So the foundation is an amazing group. Now, a little bit of the future, we're going to continue working on support for retention with officers and finding the best people we can to serve our community. I'm really excited about traffic because I know our mayor and our council is very much behind traffic calming and safety, and we're trying to do our part. You gave us a traffic officer, a traffic support officer, you're paying for equipment and all the things that we do with traffic calming. So I'm working with Diego on a traffic plan where we do a lot of different things. So next year when I come to you, we did many different enforcement initiatives, DUI, TZT, distracted driving, child seat checks, anything traffic support related. That's what I want to come back to you with, and that's my goal and our goal as a department. Vehicle updates and upgrades. Y'all know how the vehicle situation is, so we want to keep working on that. Focus on that. Health and wellness is always going to be something that I am dear to my heart. Starting in 2018, I saw the things that were going on in police departments and just nationally, how we needed to start focusing more on the health and wellness. We did our gym upgrades, we've done training. I want to focus on peer support and continue that culture. I think it's the 19th and 20th of this month. We're going to do some medical, screening type stuff for the officers, evaluations, just to help them in that. So we're going to continue that trend going forward on health and wellness. Technology, I'm always about tech, and I love software and trying to create those efficiencies. Looking at e-bikes, we've already got the UAVs going. We'll look at that. We want to look at 3D training where maybe throw on the goggles or the virtual reality and you start doing some de-escalation training. Electric patrol vehicles, we'll get there someday. I got to depend on my public works director on that infrastructure and the council and grants and everything that we can get going there. But someday we'll get there. And then Flock, thanks to a particular group, HOA in our city, we've started down that path. And hopefully we can get these license plate readers that can do a little bit more of that getting ahead of the crime kind of thing. And then traffic camera additions. I'm sure with all the traffic conversations, there's going to be a day when council says, hey, we're going to implement some more traffic cameras, and just being on top of that. And then other creative community events. I want to create a hero day. I've got a good idea on how I want to do that and some other ideas, but we still do our safety to the Shop of the Cop National Night Out. And then in September, Citizens Academy around there. So we're going to start our Citizens Academy. And I had a Rotarian this morning that had to move out of Lake Forest Park, went to Polsbo, I think it was. Scott, can't remember Scott's last name at the moment. He texted me this morning, I went through our Citizens Academy, their 6-week program, got to do all the craziest cool stuff. And I'm like, outstanding. I've got applications. You want to come on over. So really good stuff there. And then I think I've gone through that. So what I want to do is just kind of wrap it up a little bit of what 2024 was. We had 24/7 traffic cameras implemented, and that was a lot on our group. In late 2024, the city implemented 24/7 speed enforcement cameras in the school walk zone near Brookside Elementary. And while this program has effectively reduced average vehicle speeds to 22.84, with an average violations occurring at 33.5, it has significantly increased the workload on our patrol officers who must review and process violations via online video. And while I say that, that is because I'm speaking from a 2024 point of view. Now with a traffic officer, there has been a lot of change there in a very good way. And I can't wait to tell you all about it later on down the road. So with a lean patrol team, this pulls time away from proactive policing efforts. Community feedback has been really good and some bad on the program, but after several months, the program is stabilized. More updates on traffic enforcement will be shared in the next year's report in 2025 as we increase staffing to meet those demands. And then K9 UAV, the drone program. Last year, we launched those two initiatives that were talked about earlier today. The reintroduction of the K9 program, long a community favorite, and the start of a UAV program. Both were made possible through the strategic partnership and planning through the foundation, and then progress on those hopefully will be in 2026 when we do this again. Response times. Our average response times continue to be outstanding at around 2 minutes. While factors like time of day, traffic, staffing, and call types affect this, our ability to respond quickly remains a point of pride. Residents frequently commend us for our service, and our performance continues to stand out compared to other jurisdictions. I love it when somebody says, I just moved in from Seattle and they wouldn't even get here for 2 days. I think Seattle's getting better, but still, we just don't have those kind of things. We are very 100% customer service oriented police department. Staffing. So staffing remained a key challenge in 24. And as we compete with regional agencies and work to recover from inflation related impacts, we currently have 16 patrol officers equating to about 1.18 per 1,000 residents, right about the middle compared to other Washington agencies. But that's way low compared to the national average of 2.3 officers per 1,000. I honestly think from our from our staffing studies that we've done in the past, we are in the good spot. Unless you get another chief that has a completely different idea, I think we are in the perfect spot with our staffing. I'm not going to be coming to you unless we add way more traffic cameras. That might be a different conversation. I think if I have a very healthy, non-injured staff, I think we're in a good spot. And I have not been able to say that for a long time. Let's see here. We spoke about those challenges. We continue so I did talk about how it's hard to find people and recruiting people and getting the pool of folks in here and all those different things. So we did make a couple of changes in 2025 that'll hopefully make things better. We're getting a better, robust group of folks. I think that the law enforcement landscape is doing a better job in our region in hiring people. So the competitiveness is getting a lot better. So now there's a little bit bigger pool of people is what I'm starting to see, which is nice. I go to a Chiefs meeting and how are you doing? I'm fully staffed. Fantastic. That's what we want to hear so that we can start getting better quality people instead of poaching from each other. Let's see, recruitment and retention is obviously an ongoing concern. Of our 19 commissioned staff members, that means that they're on board right now because I have open positions. 10 have less than 10 years of service, averaging just 4 years of experience. The other 9 officers average 20 years of experience. However, 7 of them are eligible to retire in the next 2 years. So the retirement of experienced leaders like Sergeant Becker, 27 years, illustrates the ripple effects we face in maintaining training, supervision, and institutional knowledge. So the other thing is compensation also remains a hurdle. We are among the average in our comps, and we did a good job in doing that with our recent negotiations. But we're lower pay in the surrounding agencies with Seattle and King County, Shoreline, Kenmore, trying to, compete in that environment. This makes our organizational culture, our leadership opportunities, and supportive environment even more critical to attracting and retaining top-tier talent. So we just got to maintain the reputation that we have and our staff to somehow get to the point where when we're fully staffed, people want to come in here, and too bad we don't have any positions. I'd love to be there. One of our most pressing resource challenges has been our police vehicle fleet. Reliable and safe vehicles are essential tools in our work, and we've struggled with replacement in recent years. It's imperative that we adopt and adhere to a comprehensive vehicle replacement plan. The steps taken this year in 25 have moved us in the right direction. Thank you, Council. Let's see. So my closing thoughts. Last month marked my 24th year with Lake Forest Park Police Department. I couldn't be prouder to work with this community and staff. This is a place I truly love. 24 was a demanding year, but our team consistently rose to the challenge. However, we must be mindful of asking too much of our staff. I'm speaking from the police department, but I also speak from the city side of this. You guys have got to recognize the burnout that happens to our police department and our public works, our municipal services. It's a lot on our plate when there's demanding things. We always rise for it, but just remember that burnout phase. I want to extend a heartfelt thanks to the family and friends who support our officers daily. That's the lifeblood right there. You are the foundation of our strength. And I want to recognize the exceptional dedication of our staff and thank the city council, the mayor, and community for our continued support. And then after tonight's meeting, I'll be posting the annual report. There was an error that when I sent out the annual report out to this group, there was one error in there where it was in investigations where one particular line was missing. So I have updated that, and then that'll be the official final document. Unless you have questions tonight that we can absolutely go over and you found an error, then I'll make that fix. So is there any questions from council?
Thank you, Chief. Colleagues, questions for Chief Harden? Councilmember Riddle.
Just one comment question. When it comes to, you had the traffic incidents and all the little blue dots.
Yes.
Is there a way to look at that without the state highways to see what's happening on our side streets versus like those major highways? Is that something that we can look at?
Yes,
up
absolutely
in the
can do
future?
that. I gotta use my technology and my brain to do those kind of things, because what the city really needs is a GIS person to do exactly that. Now, that would be much easier to get that data in that format, but that doesn't mean that I can't come up with that that solution. That is pretty easy to do. Like Commander Zanilla said, majority of those accidents or collisions that happen were on Bothell and Ballinger Way. But that's been the way it's been here for 20 years. Those are the two state routes where you're going to see most of those things happen. But it is pretty scattered through the city. So yes, I will work on that and I'll get you a map that shows.
It would just be great to see what's in our purview versus what's in WashDOT's purview, and if we can see any trends that we can actually make an impact on.
Absolutely can do that.
Councilmember Lebo.
Thank you, Chief Harden, for the presentation. You show so much pride in your team, and it's well deserved.
Thank you.
There have been trends in the number of crimes and stuff. And most of the trends in the last year, 24, were down. There were some exceptions. Is there any thought to that? Because when you read regionally and nationally, there are significant trends with reductions in overall crimes. Is there something about Lake Forest Park and I don't know what Seattle, I know Seattle has reductions as well, but is there some reason why we're seeing such a dramatic reduction?
That's a hard question because we've gone through so much with COVID and how the effects happen there. And then we went through the police defunding phase and those kind of things. And then we went through a particular period of time with our legislature that really damaged the connection between law and order and where things were. I'm not going to mince words there, but there was a lot of bills that were really bad during a period of time. Those have now been fixed for the most part, and things are getting better. I think that stability is where we're trying to get to. So I think it's gone really, really, real low with some things. Then it went really high with a lot of different crimes and how things, and now we're starting to get back to kind of a normal. So I would say that if you're just looking at from one year to next, it's probably not a good idea to do that. It's kind of better to look at maybe pre-COVID times and do our numbers start adding up to about then and say for the last 5-6 years, if we were to take that out, are we still on that kind of same plateau? That's where I feel we are. We have always been very proactive about trying to stop crime. The perfect example in all of this is our burglaries. When for many years, we averaged about 90 to 95 burglaries a year. We put a huge focus on trying to stop that from happening. And we dropped down to about 50 to 60 for quite a while. Now we're down to the 30, 40 range, knock on wood that stays in that realm. but that's been pretty consistent for a while. That's more, visual with the officers out in the field. It's fast response times. It's also a kind of a culture or a reputation, I should say. Don't come to Lake Forest Park. If you burglarize one of our homes, our officer is going to catch you. And if they catch you, we are going to charge you. Well, the prosecutor charges, but we're going to send it forward to make that happen, as opposed to some agencies that don't have that kind of possible reputation. But I think if you look at it on a I think we're in the stable route.
Okay.
Nationally, it's hard to compare Washington to every other state. I mean, there's the West Coast and the East Coast. It's really hard to compare there. And then nationally and city-wise, I think, and I like this, Lake Forest Park is in a bubble, and I like that bubble, and I don't want anybody coming in our bubble. I want the Mayberry feel, but quite honestly, if people go on ride-alongs with us, we're no different from any other city of Redmond, Kirkland, Seattle. We still have the same stuff. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, any questions, other questions for Chief Harden? Yes, Councilmember Goldman.
Thank you to all three of you for the very detailed presentation. I wanted to ask about facilities. So I know that Public Works recently finished upgrading the locker rooms for you. Are there any other facility challenges within City Hall that are going to be coming to our attention?
oh man, that is a long discussion with our Public Works Director on the whole city side. There's a lot of things that need to be done. It's not police related, but we're part of this group. So we all share this particular building. So when you talk about a new roof, the generator going down, we're an essential service. We absolutely need to be going 24/7. So when a generator goes down and we have no power in a city hall government building, how do our police officers work through that? We can't write reports. We can't there's a lot of different things we need electronics for. So we need these things, but this is a bigger discussion with Public Works about our entire facility. If you want to really narrow it down, I am so thankful that our locker room got done. It's beautiful. I put some pictures in there, I think, in a CA report that didn't have the painting and the carpeting done, but it's absolutely where we should have been from the very beginning. And they did a great job. Public Works, Katie did a fantastic job in getting this going. 4.5 years, we got it down in about a 3-month period to get this thing moving. Fantastic. Where I think our particular police struggle is our Sallyport. It is a very dark, dingy, it's kind of an old garage is the way to look at it, when it should be a very clean, very bright room where when you pull a vehicle in there, you don't need a flashlight to be searching the vehicle, and it should be safe in there. And we have so much stuff. So that's kind of one function there. Our HVAC system has got lots of issues, but part of it is our venting, like our DUIs that are processed in a holding cell. We need the vent to pull out some of that air and so that people can breathe in there. There's a plumbing that's being worked on currently. So it's kind of there is some police specific things. I think we're doing pretty good, but we're in a building that is kind of maxed out. The best thing to do is get some other property where we can expand a little bit better. But that is a bigger project for this council and the next probably 3 or 4 councils to work on. So.
Yeah. And on the locker room topic, Chief Harden laid a bunch of the carpet.
Yeah, a little temporary.
Yeah. Colleagues, any other questions for Chief Harden? I would just add that the emphasis on community policing has been just absolutely extraordinary. The chief sometimes says I'm a magnet for things. And so when I've called dispatch without them knowing my role here or anything else, I think the 6 times that I've had to do that in an emergent situation, I've been on the phone with dispatch and the officers have arrived. Mm-hmm. So that illustrates it's 90 seconds, maybe sometimes, and 2 minutes, as you said, and the response rates in our surrounding communities certainly don't reflect that kind of expeditious behavior.
Thank you for pointing that out, Mary. And I hear those stories from others as well. So it's good to hear, but just realize that we're minimum staffing a lot of times. It's 2 officers, and trying to get that to work is amazing. We just have really good timing on when a call gets completed. Now another call comes in and we deal with it, as opposed to we have 5 calls stacked, and that 5th call may be you. And you're having to wait because we're dealing with other things. And we've just been really fortunate in most of those times that we're able to get to those calls.
One other comment I wanted to make on point 2 about staffing is that one of the bottlenecks too is the capacity of our HR team.
Absolutely.
the chief has been very patient and leadership has been very patient about that. But it's quite simple. You saw that it's 2% that end up getting through the process. So we need to have more people in the pipeline to make sure and that takes additional resources on the HR side. So it's something
Yes.
to think.
I'm going to point out, our HR director needed a part-timer or some help, and it was a lot dedicated to the the police side. These two have done the HR work on so much of that, and they've got enough on their plate, and they're not HR people, but they have to step in. If we're going to get coverage on the road, we need people, and to get the people, we need to get the hiring going. So we've asked a lot of our people to do these things. So it's been a huge burden on our HR director.
Well, thank you very much,
Pointing
Chief.
that
And
out.
thank you all for an outstanding department. You guys do amazing work. We really
Right.
appreciate it.
Thank you, council.
Okay. Colleagues, let me take take your temperature here. Do you want to take a 5-minute stretch break? We're at the 7th inning.
No, nobody's waving. I mean, they're waving.
Yeah. Okay, you want to just keep powering through? Everybody okay? Do you need to stretch?
I would like a stretch.
Okay,
honest.
with everybody's indulgence, we'll take, let's say 6 minutes. I can't feel my toes.
Oh my
Nice. Let's see. Okay, everybody, we're back from our quick break. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. And with that, I entertain a motion for adoption of the consent calendar.
So, second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent calendar. Any questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, it is adopted by unanimous consent. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that. And we're moving on now. Katie, welcome. We have resolution, boy, eyes are getting tired. 25-2015, authorizing the mayor to sign amendment number 3 to the professional services contract agreement AG 21-002 with Transportation Solutions Incorporated for the SR 104 40th Place Northeast Roundabout project. Ms. Phillips, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me here again this evening. This is the second touch on this topic. There haven't been any changes since we spoke about it before. So it's for construction management for the Roundabout project. We will need to hire a construction manager to help us with the construction of this project. And okay. So the way it's divided up, just to think about all the numbers, is there's the construction management and then there's the support that we get from our consultant TSI and their sub-consultants to bridge the gap for construction management. So those are the two items, dollar amounts that go into this. We did seek proposals for construction management from 3 consultants. And the lowest one, we also feel is the best one, and that is the one that we are recommending moving forward with. That's Consor for about $600,000 for their portion of the construction management. And then added to that is about $74,000 for Transportation Solutions TSI, that's our engineering design consultant, and about $77,000 for their sub-consultants. All of that grand total is approximately $750,000. The CIP, what's allocated for this in the CIP is only $625,000. So as noted when I brought this up a couple weeks ago, that there is a deficit created by the dollar value of this amendment, and that is something for council to consider. The deficit could be offset by the Transportation Benefit District or by revenue from the traffic cameras. It's just something to weigh. And that's the whole presentation. I went through it pretty quickly. I'm sorry.
Colleagues, questions? Ms. Phillips, thank you very much. We've seen this once before. Any additional questions or ruminations that have been percolating? Councilmember Goldman.
Yes, thank you for the update. Is there any update on the timing for the city going out to bid for the project? And is going out to bid contingent on approving this construction management contract?
Bidding, it's not contingent on approving this. However, we do want to bring our construction management team on board soon, so that they can be a part of finalizing the bid documents that go out. Because it's the sort of thing that they do, it just having them weigh in, and then we definitely want them on board for the period of time, the bid advertisement period, and then opening the bids and helping us with bid tabulation. These are all things that we could do on our own, but it would be much better if we had our whole team in place so that we all had like a kickoff meeting together and really started strong together. As to the update on schedule, right now, we're looking at advertising on June 9th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, other questions for Ms. Deputy? No, I'm sorry.
I think we might be
Please.
thinking the same thing. When would be the next time we would see this? Would that be 2 weeks out?
Yeah,
was
if you didn't act on this tonight, I would come back on 5/22.
Okay, I would suggest to my colleagues that maybe we suspend the 3-touch rule just so that we can get through this in a timely manner and meet that productive need that you just described to us. So I would like to propose that we suspend the 3-touch rule for resolution 25/2015, authorizing the mayor to sign amendment number 3 to the professional services contract agreement. ...
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to suspend the 3-touch rule regarding resolution 25-2015. There any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it to suspend the 3-touch rule.
Then I will move resolution 25-2015, authorizing the mayor to sign amendment number 3 to the professional services contract agreement AG-21-002 with Transportation Solutions, Inc. for the State Route 104 40th Place Northeast Roundabout project.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize the mayor to sign resolution. I'm sorry, to pass resolution 25-2015, authorizing the mayor to sign amendment number 3 in the professional services contract agreement AG 21-002 with Transportation Solutions Incorporated for the SR 104 40th Place Northeast Roundabout project. Any further questions or discussion? Councilmember Furtado.
Not a question, but I just wanted to compliment Ms. Phillips on the presentation. Even though this was a second touch and nothing had changed, the fact that you made such a really clear set of slides to illustrate the point you were making, I really appreciate that very much. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Okay, hearing no more questions, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Phillips.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it very much. Excellent work as always. Director Hoffman, we're moving on to ordinances and resolutions for action. Resolution 25-2016, authorizing the mayor to sign the Water Resource Inventory Area 8, RIA 8 Interlocal Agreement Renewal 2026-2035.
Thank
Director
you, Mayor,
Hoffman.
Council. I'm Mark Hoffman, Community Development Director. This item has been before you 3 times now. Jayson Kuntz, the recovery manager with RIA 8, gave a presentation. Then in March, then we introduced the resolution in April. And tonight we're asking for authorization for the mayor to enter into the new interlocal agreement to extend the RIA 8 participation 10 more years from 2026 to 2035. Staff's recommendation is for approval. The materials are the same as the April meeting. There were no carryover questions, and I will entertain any new questions if you have them.
Colleagues, questions for Director Hoffman? Okay, I'd entertain a motion for adoption. Deputy Mayor Bertani.
I'd like to move resolution 25-2016, authorizing the mayor to sign the Water Resource Inventory Area 8 Interlocal Agreement Renewal for 2026-35.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of adoption of resolution 25-2016, authorizing the mayor to sign the Water Resource Inventory Area 8, RIA 8 Interlocal Agreement Renewal 25, 26, 2020, 2035. Please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it. It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was sort of anticlimactic, was it? There. Thanks for your patience. Moving on to some other business. Mark is going to bring to us community development permit tracking software update to iWorQ. Thank you, Director Hoffman.
Thank you, Mayor, again. There are no materials in the packet, but we're taking advantage of this opportunity to prepare for May 22nd and the request that we'll have there. So I'm hoping to give some background tonight and some flavor and start down that path. In order to do that, I beg your patience. I'm very glad at this late hour that I actually spent some time this evening writing down what I would like to convey instead of rambling in front of you. So I beg if I could read 5 bulleted items and then follow it up with some facts. I think you'll understand the path that we're proposing. So permit tracking software, as you probably know, is what we use to enter your building permit when you do an intake, assign a number, a fee, assign a status, a planner, and then record it into the future. We're proposing to go away from what we currently use and try a new tracking software. So to give you a little background, Lake Forest Park currently has a contract with Excella. It's been about almost 9 years. And so the contract is starting to age. As you know, we just had a 20-year building official retire last fall, who was very paper oriented. And to respect his methods and his service, we did not start down this path of looking at permit tracking software until we had this moment. So my first point is that we are at that moment where we are learning as we go how to go into the digital world and leave the paper-oriented, single mind historic information tracking in the brain and convert it to software. We're at that point. We don't have a budget. We have not come to you a year ago and saying we need a budget to go digital or a budget to go new software, but that's the opportunity that we are conveying tonight. So to start with that, our experience with Excella has not been stellar. It is underutilized. Not having been here that time, I cannot fully explain why, but from what I see, it's underutilized and relatively expensive and poses some problems as far as workflow that we need to correct. So our original path was renewal, and then in seeking renewal, we dug into where's the contract, what are the provisions and so forth, and we've been working on that pretty much all winter. The big takeaway from our current software is that it is an old build. It's an old model. Excella has new software available, but in order to access that, we have to pay the shiny new price for the new software. The existing build and the existing contract did not include regular updates, patches, fixes that bring us into the modern world. So when we first looked at the software we have, the option was, yes, you can continue with Excella, but you need to buy this new build and recreate everything you have. At that moment, we thought, while we explore that, let's look at other options. So my third bullet is that in the past 3 months, staff has looked at a variety of software packages that we personally use, surrounding cities that we've had experience with, and we centered on 5. To name them: SmartGov Granicus, which I personally use, My Building Permit, which I've also used, Civic Plus, iWorQ, and Excella. Excella now being owned by Carasoft. After reviewing each one of those and sitting in presentations and sales pitches, we quickly eliminated 3 based on 2 criteria. What do we really need for a city of this size that would serve us? And 2, what is the cost? So with that, we centered on two, staying with Excella under the current arrangement, giving us time to maybe look at other options in the future or explore iWorks. The more we explored iWorks, the better the option became. They're very responsive. So after viewing these presentations, we attempted to make a determination about the right size of the software we need. And in doing so, enjoy a cost savings, find a software that integrates with other software, for example, Bluebeam, Adobe Pro, King County GIS, the REST acronym, which I don't know what that means, but it's your parcel data that they upload for lot splits and so forth, and addresses. Enjoy frequent updates and fixes or patches, be able to provide self-guided and directed training opportunities not available with our current software, utilize standardized templates and forms, receive direct assistance as needed, and head into a digital future accompanied by the appropriate permit tracking software. The last bulleted background item, the recommended change is largely based on the number and types of permits we see in a city of this size. We're, not to generalize, we're primarily built out and we have extensive critical areas and tree canopy. We're not largely, well, you know very well the community. But based on those characteristics, we focused on iWorks. Now to get into some facts on why we're making this recommendation, or will be on May 22nd with a contract of materials and agenda bill and resolution. Excella limits the number of users and charges additional to add or change. That was a problem for us, even with 6 to 9 person small staff. iWorks, by example, is unlimited users and is cloud-based and offers storage. And so there are some differences as far as storage costs from Excella to iWorks, but the user interface for iWorks is significantly different. In looking at the current contract and the terms, as we were identifying a recommended software, it became quickly apparent that it was like dating. It's leaving a software at the exact same time you're trying to determine whether a new software meets your needs and how to establish that and learn what the terms are. And the danger of leaving one behind is you may be left with no tracking software. So we've approached it that way. On April 29th, we were forced to give a 60-day written termination letter to Excella. The reason that day is that was the 61st day. To give you some character of what that day consisted of, I asked directly for a 1-year quote that is in line with our contract, 1-year annual automatic renewals. They insisted on a 2-year quote. 2 years or nothing. That day I made the decision that this recommendation was forthcoming and I was hoping for the support. So I gave the 60-day written termination letter to Excella and started to finalize the iWorks contract and figure out, is this going to work? And by work, Excella contract ends June 28th, and we would need to do essentially a 2-part training program with iWorks, one to set up the workflow, get everything going, do the data dump, make it live, and then another 1 or 2 months of actually learning to utilize it. So in those discussions, that is the framework. In order to do that, this contract becomes paramount. So tonight, I'm supposed to give you the background so that hopefully May 22nd, we can go forward. Now, to give you some flavor, the quotes are proprietary, so I'm not comparing 5 softwares, but I think it's safe to say that I can tell you the cost savings that we're hoping to see. And the 2-year Excella contract had a year 1 total of $29,928, a year 2 request of $31,424 for the same build that we currently underutilize. One other element to that, in order for us to talk to Excella or learn Excella or make settings changes or assign an administrator, We have another contract with a company called Avocet. They are the service provider that interfaces between the city staff and Excella. That's a contract for $6,000 a year, continues annually. That requires a 10-day written notice, and they're currently helping us, hopefully, with the transition from Excella to iWorks. By comparison, the iWorks quote that we are going to bring forth to you is a 3-year term. The first year is $19,000. Most of the one-time setup fees are waived, primarily because our Public Works Department already uses a module build. We would have a different, completely isolated build. Somehow in there, there's a savings. They would like us as a customer. The first year quote is 19,000. Annually after that, it's 18,500. And they have an escalator of a maximum of 5%. The current Excella contract has the maximum accelerator of 7%. So it's very comparable for some certainty. So taken together, the annual cost for 2 years for Excella, plus the Avocet support approaches $80,000. That's budgeted. And it's not what we want to use. And so if we do this under the budgeted amount, it's approximately 67,000 for 3 years. And so that's why we're portraying it tonight. We see it as a cost savings. We see it as the software we want. We would like to bring a contract to you. And then hopefully with success on May 22nd, start down the path with iWorks the morning of the 23rd. And it's going to be a challenge. I do not absolutely believe there won't be any glitches, but whether it's an hour or a day or a week, if we experience an outage, I've used much worse systems in the past. I've worked at cities where in an interim basis, we use a Word document and Excel spreadsheet. When I was at the planning counter, when I first started off, we used an HTE DOS thing with symbols and codes. So we can get through this, but I want to minimize that and start learning iWorks and a smooth transition. Utilize the Avocet contract to speak the same language with Excella so we get the data dump at the right time, inform the workflow, possibly pay for a second data dump to transition and then go live with iWorks. And so I think that's the best picture I can paint for you 2 weeks early. We may have an opportunity at the Committee of the Whole on the 19th. Early next week, Monday, Tuesday, I'll be writing these materials in the resolution and then we'll surface them, but they definitely will be in the packet for the 22nd. And we're not asking for a decision tonight, but it would be an excellent opportunity to get any concerns or feedback that you have, because it becomes harder to change course as each hour goes by.
Colleagues, thank you for Tony.
Yeah, thanks, Director Hoffman, for bringing this to our attention. And I think I want to thank you for doing all the legwork, interviewing the firms and finding the best deal we can get and still bringing it quite well under what's budgeted. The concern I had was, I don't know if on your committee, when you were reviewing these, you had our Mr. Emmons take a look at the computer security aspect of it. Does it expose any of our other systems to the outside world in a way that's not conducive to continuing business? So I always worry about that whenever we get new software.
That is one of the challenges, as we're reviewing critical area permits and, on our other focus, we're becoming IT experts and there's just no way we could understand it. But to the extent of your question, there is no link between our city drives and the cloud-based iWorks software. The data dump will happen. It'll be informed. We'll enter the data. The credit card electronic function is integrated into iWorks. And so we don't see that it is a direct effect on any of our storage or software.
So there's no way that a virus could, for instance, sneak in through the back door there?
Being a community development director, I cannot tell you.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
There's no way. I get
but as far-
emails and texts every day that I fear
Right.
can do anything.
Well, fair
My
enough.
Lindsay hat on, that's
yeah.
the.
Yeah, but to the extent of our experience with permit tracking software, no.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Riddle.
Yeah, I just pulled up the website to see what this is. And do you have a sense of which modules that you want? And were you thinking of growing it to encompass, or are you going to get what you need now and that's what you're asking for?
Mostly we're going to get what we need now, but we don't anticipate needing to amend the contract in this 3-year term to change modules.
Okay.
It is an added cost. But by way of example, we have a permit portal now for plumbing and mechanical to be automated. That would be the basis. We're looking to add tree permitting to that. So it's less human function in the office. And then with payments. For planning permits, the workflow is what interests us. And so the design will incorporate that. I could log in and see who was the last to touch or get a reminder on, buildings done with this permit. So it's planning's turn or fire's turn. And so that module will be based around that, but it will also have code enforcement. But the two primary pillars are the building permits and the planning permits. And not going the route of integrating the public works system together with some big master.
Councilmember Goldman, you look like you're raising your hand.
Yes, I have 2 questions for you. The first, is this change going to be mainly on the staff side of things, or will this change how the public is either submitting permits or looking up permit information?
Both, and favorably. The idea of the workflow is how it's done now is you walk down the hall, hope somebody's there, and you say, hey, where do you stand on that thing with the thing? Or you send an email, or you get a series of phone calls from the public. And they give you very little information, but then you have to dig it around. This will be public facing, and it will integrate those communication coordination steps by step. Some of this will not be fully automated, and mostly that's the planning application reviews, which are much more complicated. But at the very least, it'll have a status. If they call, somebody can punch in 5 different data points and figure out what the status of that permit is, or who to talk to, or who next in the chain of review. And so that is the staff time savings as well.
Yep. And then my second question, since this would be a new software for the city, I guess what made you decide on a 3-year contract rather than sort of like a 1-year, try it out and see how it goes?
Flat out, that's what was offered. They portrayed they would like us as a customer. We asked for examples of surrounding or regional cities in Washington that they serve. They're very similar. It's Cedro-Willig, and the city manager, Charlie there, I've known for a long time. So it's right size for Cedro-Willig. Centralia, Arlington. Now I'm very tired at this point, but those are the closest ones I can remember. And our own public works department, but I'll add that's a complete different function and module.
Councilmember Lebo and then Councilmember Good.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Hoffman, for the presentation. And this makes a lot of sense based upon what you've presented. And I would be supportive of a 3-year contract. I wouldn't want to do this every year.
Thank you. There's a joke in here somewhere, Mark. I know. Mark has a lot of spare time.
No, I'm a blurter, so I was gonna absolutely agree.
There are so many advantages with a cloud-based system. One of the challenges, and it was mentioned earlier about security, is there a way to understand whether or not they have backup for an event of ransomware, where they basically get locked up and we get locked out?
We have not addressed that yet.
And the risk is that if they suffer a ransomware and they don't have appropriate backup, we have no history, no data. And so is there a way that we can either get the data so that if we're uploading it to them, it can be uploaded somewhere else, or if they have sufficient security to prevent that?
I could ask, yeah.
There's a very large local agency that suffered ransomware, and they lost even their personal contacts to call people.
Okay, I'll check on that. Part of the challenge is terminology, so if
Yeah.
I get the terminology from Aaron
Yeah.
and ask going into the 22nd and get some
Thank you.
assurance.
Oh,
We're good.
I just wanted to make a comment, as I've used software like this for many years in other cities, and it is very beneficial and very helpful to the staff as well as the people submitting the permit, because they can find out where statuses are. And if they can't reach a person in planning, that, everybody that submits can log in. So I'm very supportive of it. Just want to, and thank you for your hard work and staying awake.
And if I may, there is software that we looked at that I'll say has the bells and whistles, and I would love to have. But given the quantity and type of permits, it's just not justified. Yeah. This is a very basic functional product that's very responsive.
Colleagues, any other questions for Director Hoffman? I would just add that Mark has a lot on his plate and is very graciously taken this on. In addition, we thank you for that, Mark. And we're really looking forward to some time for you to take time off here at about July 1st, maybe? Is that when you get to
July 23rd.
Well, right after we're done with middle housing.
May 23rd.
And thank you for hanging in there tonight, and sorry for not having written materials, but there's going to be a
That's
lot
okay.
coming your way. Each meeting until July 1st.
Thank you very much, Mark. We really appreciate it. Okay, is there any other business? Good order. Deputy Mayor Fertile.
Yeah, just a quick reminder to council. It's not really a reminder. I just sent you an email that contains the application form for the interim appointment for the vacant position. And on it, there are some application questions which you may want to basically substitute your own question for. So I'm soliciting feedback over the weekend, since we have our special meeting on Monday. And so if you could get those to me by, say, Monday morning, that would be awesome. All right, thank you so much for your cooperation.
Joking here. Colleagues, any other business? Council committee reports, then moving on to that. Let's see, we had any committees? How about Parks? What happened with Parks? I think didn't they postpone?
Yeah, I'm asking about the Parks Board. Did we have a Parks Board meeting?
I think it got canceled.
I think it was canceled, yeah. We can always update next time if somebody forgets or it is pretty late. Any council member reports? To share? Okay, it is getting to be the hours of the evening. Mayor's report, I'll make it very brief. Reminder, we have, just logistically look at the schedule here, folks. We have a double meeting on Monday. We have a meeting at Shoreline City Hall with our friends up there. And then we will be taking time after that to come back here and get set up and start at 7:30 for a special meeting to discuss the RCWs and the governance manual and for the rules and procedures for selecting a caretaker position, person to take a caretaker position on the council. And I know you're all looking forward to having a very methodical conversation about that on Monday. So as Deputy Mayor Fertani said, if you have any questions about that, please, about the questions, please make sure you take a look at it. There'll be other times to ask some questions on Monday. But remember, it's a special meeting. We're going to try to keep it within the article, so to speak, particularly because this is a sensitive topic. So let's see, with that, city administrator's report you have. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for filling in. How did it feel?
Just fine. Cold.
I wish I knew somebody at Public Works that could work on that HVAC system. Sorry, it's late. No, thank you everybody for being here, and Kim and everybody.
Mayor,
Yes.
do you want to mention the budget and finance meeting? It's been moved.
Oh, yes, the Director Vaughn is unavailable for the Budget and Finance meeting on, what's our skit?
15th.
The 15th.
Is it the 15th? No, 15th?
It was the 15th.
15th, okay. So being rescheduled to the 29th, there is a question that you were going to raise about the possibility of using that time for additional consideration of candidate.
Right, and this is no secret, but because we are undergoing the interim vacant position discussion, I had asked Budget and Finance Chair Lebo if there would be some possibility that we could append a special meeting onto that particular date. I understand that Councilmember Lebo, you're still talking with Director Vaughn about what needs to be presented on that day.
I think there's an opportunity. I just, I don't recall what the agenda was going to be for that meeting off the top, so.
Oh, for the Budget and Finance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any specific
Yeah,
items, but I
so
understood.
I believe that there will be an opportunity.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Well, thanks everybody for your flexibility. I think it's, yeah, we'll move forward. Anything else for the good of the order? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Goldberg.
Another scheduling question. So the middle housing deadline is June 30th, and my understanding is it's still with the Planning Commission. They're having a public hearing about it. Are we going to need to add any June special council meetings to make sure that we have enough time as a council to fully consider middle housing?
I'll let your council chair respond to that.
Yes, there is the possibility that that will happen, of course. Unfortunately, at this point, we don't know for sure. So I'm going to ask, I think, let's see. Yeah, on the meeting of at the committee of the whole meeting, have your calendars ready because I think by that time we will definitely know whether we need to have a special meeting on that particular topic.
Councilor Riddle.
Is there any way that we can get some working documents or something a little, as early as possible so that we can be familiar with what they're going to be proposing to us, even if it's not the fine-tuned language, but just kind of the general content?
Of course, I understand they're still in preparation, but at some point we just have to get a draft and start looking at it. So absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good questions. Thank you, Councilmember Goldman, for bringing that up. Anything else? So I will say that keep your calendars handy because it is going to be June is going to be a very busy month in addition to the process that you're going to undergo with selecting a new friend to join you at the dais here. So, okay, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.